I haven't created new muses in a while purely because that takes a lot of energy and I also had no inspiration. But then I started playing Genshin back in December of last year. Actually, it was like December 30th or something to be exact, so it was really at the end of the year. Anyways, after having played for a bit, I had a thought in my head. Why don't I create Genshin muses? It could be really fun and also I'd have no reason to hold back. So yeah, that's basically this video. I created 3 in total and I'll explain the ideas for them. They're all really rough ideas and I'll refine them more as I can, but at least they have something. I thought of the initial ideas during one of my classes because apparently all good ideas come at the most random times. So it started off with a pair of siblings. The speed paint you guys are watching right now is for the older sister of this. Her name is Karam Xianyue. The base idea was that she was raised in Liyue Harbor alongside her brother. However, her brother is terminally ill. Due to his illness, Xianyue decides that she is going to marry a very smart doctor in hopes that he will find a way to cure her brother, and by marrying him, she'd essentially make this process a lot easier. However, her brother thought that what she was doing is absolutely stupid, even if she was doing it for his own good. I'll explain more about the brother when we get to his section. So essentially, Xianyue is stuck in this marriage, and to make matters worse, this man isn't exactly a good person, kind of shady and isn't a good husband, which is why her brother had gotten so mad at her anyways. So that is the gist of her lore. One of the most important things to figure out was her brother's illness. My friend pointed out that the brother could have actually had Eleazar because it was an uncurable illness before the end of Sumeru's Arc Conquests. But that being said, that didn't mean that these two needed to be from Sumeru, or so I thought. Turns out, they needed a connection to Irminsul, which meant one of their parents had to be from Sumeru. So I decided that their father is from Sumeru, hence why Xianyue doesn't have a Chinese last name. I did have to do some research to double check what Sumeru was based off of to make sure I could choose a surname. I saw mentions of South Asia and the Middle East, so I went off of that. I feel like most of my muses are very similar because I tend to concentrate on like one region as their origin, so being able to do something else was nice. Now, I'll say this right now, that Xianyue and her brother have no memories of Sumeru since their father moved to Liyue Harbor to be with their mother before the children were born. I don't think they'd visit Sumeru too often. At least, Xianyue didn't visit Sumeru or really anywhere. Her brother is a different story, but I'll get onto him when we get to his section. This is Xianyue's section, so I should keep things focused on her. So I'll talk about her personality because I think that's definitely something important. So what I was thinking given her backstory, she is a very cold, calm person for the most part. However, I think she's prone to letting her emotions get the best of her, and you mostly see it in her actions. She will go pretty far for those she cares about. She's probably not good at expressing her care in words, but as I said, her actions say everything. I imagine that she's not exactly the type to argue with those in power. Not the most rebellious type. People below her or the same rank as her is free game, but definitely against her husband, her parents, etc., she will just keep her mouth shut and listen to orders, to a degree. There are a few things she wouldn't do under any circumstances, like harming family members, for example. This is probably a very loose idea of her personality, and because of all these muses being relatively new, they still need to be refined more. And that usually takes me months, because I just need to see what remains consistent in their behavior whenever I write them out. So for now, this is what we're working with. So with all of the character information out of the way, I can finally talk about the design choices I made with Xianyue. It was actually difficult for me to come up with something even though I was allowed to go crazy because it's Genshin. Her hair was a struggle, but it wasn't the hardest thing for me. I at least knew I wanted blunt bangs on her because I found that cute. Then I went for sort of a hime cut because I like that. However, I felt as if her hair was a bit plain, so I added these 2 hair tufts at the side of her head. Then I decided to say that she had her hair like half up, and then yeah, that is her hairstyle for the most part. Though figuring out her hair was easy compared to the clothes. I don't know how I describe Genshin's fashion style. Now, because she resides in Liyue, I looked up many references of traditional Chinese clothing. I saw many pretty things and tried to put Xianyue in something, but things did not feel right. Like she was looking more like an NPC than a character, and I could not have that. So I tried to add a little bit of flair to her by adding a shawl and then making her top sleeveless with arm warmers. Is this all practical? Not really. But I mean, I don't think many designs are practical and we're all just here to have fun. We're on to coloring now. So her color palette was something I also had to figure out. I decided that I was going to make her a cryovision holder. Obviously, the designs don't have to scream out what vision they have, but it helped. I ended up wanting to give her a lot of blues and other cool colors because of it. Now, getting the swatches was painful because I was trying my hardest to make sure all of the colors weren't the same tone. I think that's something I tend to struggle with when it comes to coloring. Even if the colors are different, if they have the same tone or like value, I don't know what the right word for it is, then it just looks off to me. I need some contrast. Particularly dealing with darker colors is tougher, and while things were moderate for Xianyue, I can't say the same for her brother. I think my favorite part about coloring this was coming up with her hair. It's so nice. I gave her a darker skin tone because I think it'd be really pretty on her. Most of my characters are extremely pale, so I need to fix that with some variety. But also, my choice of giving her white hair with black streaks looks so nice. I decided to go with white hair because we know that's my weakness for real. Anyways, we're nearing the end of the speed paint, so I'll go ahead and show the final reference sheet. Here is the reference sheet for Xianyue. I think she turned out looking really pretty, and she was definitely fun to design. I need to make sure I draw her when I get the chance. So now I can finally talk about Xianyue's brother, who I named Yulin. So I already explained that Yulin has Eleazar, and it's safe to say he is suffering a lot. Now, because of his illness, his parents had often restricted him from doing things. He wasn't allowed to go out, and most of his days were spent at home. But obviously, he hated this. And as he grew older, he did become more rebellious as a result. So for those who don't know Eleazar, I'll explain it. So in Sumeru, there's this thing called the Withering. It's pretty much like a decay to the area, and it is a result of the introduction of forbidden knowledge. The land is weakened, and if you spend too much time in the zone, you can get really sick. Now, Eleazar is like a manifestation of that on the human body. Yulin has dark scales that he conceals with bandages, and those areas are numb to him. He also feels fatigue and exhaustion most of the time. There is a lot more to it, but I think I'll keep the explanations brief for now in this video. All you need to know is that Yulin was going through it. Despite his condition, that didn't stop Yulin from wanting to go out. Now, Xianyue getting married to this shady man and disregarding her own well-being pissed Yulin off, and that was kind of what made him run off. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. And was it an asshole move? Definitely. But at the time, he thought that if he ran away, there would be no reason for Xianyue to marry this man, but he was terribly wrong. When Yulin ran away, he encountered the captain of the Ocean Plumes, a pirate group from Inazuma. I wouldn't be surprised if it was because Yulin got into a fight and the captain witnessed it and was like, maybe I should talk to this kid. It doesn't matter if Yulin is battling Eleazar, he'll find a way to throw hands and make it out just fine. Once the captain started talking with Yulin, he revealed that he was a captain of the pirate crew, and at that moment, Yulin knew he found his ticket out of here. So he pretty much asks to join, and the captain lets him, so that's how he ended up as a pirate. The other crew members were wary of Yulin at first since he was new, but eventually he became a valued member. Though here's the thing, nobody knows that he has Eleazar. Yulin actively hides it from the crew because he doesn't want a repeat of being restricted. Though as time goes on, it is difficult for him to continue hiding his illness, so eventually everyone will find out, but for now, it'll remain hidden. Pretty much everything that Yulin has done up to this point should be impossible given his circumstances, but he's made it work, not without consequences though. I think over the years, he's gotten really good at making excuses to explain why he's acting up because of Eleazar and also putting up a strong face. Though behind closed doors, he is definitely not doing too good and is probably counting down the days he has left to live. It doesn't help that I decided he'll be a Claymore user. It's because he's so unbelievably stubborn and wants to prove that yes, he can in fact make it work. So overall, Yulin has done the impossible, but I'll say that the consequences to pushing yourself that far will catch up to him really quickly, because it's boring if your character could do everything. So personality-wise, I think it's very obvious that Yulin is someone who is really stubborn and puts up a strong face. Clearly, I love making muses like that. He has quite the temperament and is definitely very foul and brash. If it's also not obvious, Yulin is reckless even though he is the last person that should be reckless. While he may be foul and seem like he hates the world, I think certain people he genuinely cares for, such as the captain of the crew. And for those he does care about, Yulin does try to act in their best interest, even if his methods are questionable. So he's not too different from Xianyue in that regard. But the only problem is that I think it's very easy to take Yulin's methods wrong because of a lack of communication. He never told Xianyue he was leaving because he thought if she didn't have a reason to marry the man, she wouldn't. He pretty much left the night before the wedding without much of a word. So Xianyue simply thinks he left because he must really hate the marriage and is being stubborn again. But there's more to it. Honestly, I think Yulin would be a lot better off if he did actually communicate with people instead of shouldering all of his burdens and problems on himself. But I can't quite blame him too much because he was restricted a lot by his parents. So if he says anything, he is afraid people will just try to protect him, so yeah. Now, I decided to give him a hydro vision because pirate. Yeah, that's the only reason. I mean, you don't have to have a hydro vision to be a pirate, obviously. I mean, Queen Beidou exists. But I thought a hydro vision on him would be fun. I actually have yet to think about proper lore on how all of these characters got their vision, so I'll do more thinking about that. I think that's all of the character lore for Yulin out of the way, so I can talk about the design process finally. I think what's so funny about his design is that he is giving calm, cool, collected vibes, but I already said that he is a very brash and foul person. But something I like doing with characters is having unexpected twists, so I guess that's something. Now, I'll say that it took me a hot second to figure out what I wanted to do with Yulin's hair. All of my male characters have similar hairstyles, and I know for this, I couldn't just do that. I don't have any male characters with extremely long hair, so I thought to give Yulin long hair, though he keeps it tied up in that messy bun of his. Also, I ended up having his hair cover one of his eyes. I don't think there's any lore reason for that. Like, his other eye is fine in case you guys are curious. But I guess just appearances. Sometimes we just do things because they look cool and not because they're practical. Coloring Yulin was an absolute nightmare because of the swatch and color problems I talked about in Xianyue's section. I eventually did figure out some colors, but man, it took all of my brain cells. I wanted to give Yulin more of a red color scheme because I thought it was fun. Well, it's not exactly a red color scheme, but he does have a decent amount of red in his design compared to Xianyue. So I gave Yulin a slightly darker skin tone than Xianyue. My reasoning is that he's out in the sun and traveling with the crew while Xianyue is mostly cooped up inside. I think I forgot to mention that in her section, but anyways, that explains their different skin tones. But we welcome it because I really did need more variety in my characters. I think out of all of the characters I made for this, Yulin is my favorite because I did put a lot of baggage on him. We always love the characters with the most angst apparently. But also, I think I could potentially explore a lot of things with him that I don't usually do for any of my other muses. Now, before I can do any exploring, I think I have to make sure I have all the details in order, which will take a while. Hopefully I have it before Art Fight this year, if I'm even participating in it. It's a while away, but it's good to be prepared, right? I will admit that I kept getting distracted on each of the reference sheets, so they all took a little longer than they should. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of pause moments in the speed paints because I was looking at something. But at least I got them done over the span of 3 days. I was working on these before Sunday, so yeah. Anyways, we're at the final portion of the speed paint, so I'll show you guys the final reference sheet. Here is the final reference sheet. It turned out pretty nicely and I'm honestly glad I survived that one. So this is the final Genshin muse I made. Originally, he wasn't meant to be created, but I had an idea. What if I gave Yulin a love interest that he ends up actively avoiding after a while because he doesn't want this person to get attached and feel hurt when he inevitably dies? Well, he won't actually die because the Sumeru are conquest and whatnot, but in the moment he is thinking about his impending doom. And that's how Hanyu Kaguya was created. Though I made things somewhat interesting. So Kaguya is the son of the captain. He's an overconfident, arrogant, egotistical person, but people still respect him because he kind of has the skills to back up his ego. Though Yulin very much dislikes Kaguya because his attitude. Not to mention Kaguya keeps demanding respect from Yulin, but Yulin isn't having it. And Yulin is only getting away with this behavior because Kaguya's father likes him. So I had set up Yulin and Kaguya to be rivals because that's fun. We always love a good rivals to lovers ship. But also that'd make this more slow burn, and it'd probably hit a lot harder when we get onto the Yulin avoiding Kaguya phase. So Kaguya's backstory is surprisingly depressing, and I was shocked at myself for coming up with this. I had to explain why on Earth his father and him are in a pirate crew and sailing around. So basically, Kaguya's mom had died a few years after giving birth to him. As it turns out, she had a weakened immune system as well as an illness that she hid from both Kaguya and his father. All of this was revealed to the both of them when she passed away. Now, I imagine Kaguya's father knew that his mother was sick, but she often played it off as something that didn't need immediate attention. So after her passing, Kaguya's father went through her old stuff and saw that she had wished to travel the world but couldn't because she was stuck in Inazuma. So Kaguya's father decided that he was going to sail off and travel for her. Kaguya wanted to travel too despite being very young, and since Kaguya is one of the few things the mom left behind, the father decided to allow Kaguya to travel with him. He managed to get some of his buddies to go along with him, and now they're kind of this pirate crew. It obviously started off as just traveling, but then it turned into things you'd expect pirates to do. Kaguya's father definitely spoiled him a bit and tried to make sure he had nice things in life. Since Kaguya is half of his mother, that meant he should be treated extra well. So the spoiling contributed a tiny bit to Kaguya ending up the way he did. Another thing was that there was this unspoken expectation that one day, Kaguya was going to take over this crew. They aren't a well-known crew, but they did enough. So there was a bit of pressure, so Kaguya figured that by being confident like this, he could fake it until he made it. And maybe the attitude would become the truth. But sadly, he does struggle with some insecurity and thoughts of how he kind of doesn't deserve any of this. But he's good at masking that with a cookie smirk and a laugh, so that's his thing. So I was probably extremely evil for giving Kaguya this backstory and then making his love interest someone who is hiding an illness that is slowly killing him. But I always love good angst potential. So I said that nobody knows why Yulin is suffering from Eleazar yet, but that'll change obviously. Of course, Yulin will have his moment where he slips up around Kaguya and he thinks Kaguya won't catch on, but Kaguya will catch on. I think Yulin would be more likely to slip up around Kaguya because he thinks out of everyone on the crew, Kaguya would care the least about him, so a slip up is somewhat acceptable. But Kaguya would probably care the most out of everyone. Despite his personality, Kaguya is actually a caring person, but just like everyone else in this video, he's terrible at showing it. But he's better than Yulin, definitely. I have angst drawing ideas with these two, but I'll see if I have the will to actually make it happen. So that should be all of the lore out of the way. I'll talk about the design now. I think I wanted to die when trying to figure out Kaguya's hair. It couldn't be boring because this was Genshin we're talking about. So I struggled a bit and came up with something, but honestly, it's giving Xingqiu vibes and I don't know how I feel about that, so we're just going to casually move on. Before I started working on Kaguya's reference, I thought that Yulin was going to be the hardest one to tackle, but I was wrong. I was trying to figure out how to do Kaguya's clothing and he had the same problem Xianyue had. Things were looking a little plain and boring, so I had to figure something out and added a couple of random things. His outfit is far from practical, but you know what? He makes it work in a fight. I know there was this specific vibe I was looking for him. I'm not sure if I can describe it in words, and I don't think I pull it off. But his design is decent enough. Though I think the colors was when I started to really struggle more. I mean, we know I've been struggling with designs this entire video, but Kaguya especially was a challenge. One of the first challenges was figuring out his hair color. You'll see me initially trying out blonde on him. I mean, the blonde could have been cute, but it didn't fit. I tried a lot of other things after that, and I was trying so hard not to do purple hair, and the reason for that is because I was worried it may be too on the nose for what vision I was going to give him, that being Electro. I know, kinda funny I was acting like this considering I decked Xianyue out in a bunch of light blues and she's a cryovision holder, but still. Though eventually I gave in and did dark purple hair, but with a faded blue gradient at the tips because he was looking a bit boring. I almost wanted to do streaks or chunks, but considering what Xianyue and Yulin already had, I think it'd be a bit much, so yeah. For clothing, I decided to go the blue color scheme route for Kageya. Also decided that he should have lighter colors, so that was another thing. I wanted him to contrast Yulin's design because nothing is better than having a pair of characters who heavily contrast each other, right guys? Seriously, I have a soft spot for something like that. The initial colors without patterns were plain though, so I did draw on a couple of patterns. I know it'll make my life miserable to draw them later, but I decided to just deal with it. I gave sort of a flower and bird motif, mainly because I saw the ha in Hanyu could mean feather, and so I went on a roll. The flowers were random though. I started drawing them on the smoke bombs attached to his rope belt, and then it became a thing all throughout his design. And if we're wondering about the smoke bombs, he was probably the only one I thought of skills for, but only kind of. Basically, just throw a smoke bomb that applies electro, distract the enemies, and either just stab them with your polearm or have someone else do the work for you. It's nothing unique, but it's something. So this is the last bit of the speed paint. I'll show you guys the final reference sheet. Here is the final reference sheet. So with that, I have officially created 3 Genshin muses and I should make sure I draw them. This was really fun to do. Thank you all so much for watching until the end, and I hope to catch everyone in the next one.